All right, good morning. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It is October 31st, Halloween 2019. It is 10 minutes before 8 a.m. Dark and dreary and wet out and snowing. So this is the first snow of the year for this car. And I wanted to make this video because I did a video last winter when we had this polar vortex or whatever they called it, where it was 20 below zero for a couple days, eventually hit 24 below zero. That's Fahrenheit. And I did a couple of videos on that and how the car performed in that weather. And those videos have made a sort of a comeback. There's a resurgence in views on those videos. In fact, the most watched video on my channel for the last month has been the video on 24 below zero with the Model 3. And so with winter being here, I wanted to give you guys an update, but I also wanted to do a little bit more, give a little bit more of an explanation on what it was like driving this car at 24 below. So first of all, I still have my 20-inch wheels and Falken tires on the car. So I'm going to be seeing how those that wheel and tire combo does in the winter. I still have my stock 18-inch Aero wheels and tires, and I'll be putting those on if these prove to have traction issues or whatever here in the wintertime. But the car, it obviously EVs, the range suffers a bit when it's cold. Although this car having a 300+ mile range, it kind of doesn't really affect me much at all, other than I no longer show up at home with 40 or 45% state of charge. I show up at home with like 25% state of charge at the end of the day. But really it doesn't affect me. I can tell you that Tesla has done a wonderful job about with the software updates as far as making this car more usable in the wintertime. Case in point, the windows used to freeze shut. Well, now they do this like 1 or 2 millimeter scoot up and down when you go to open the door to kind of break the any ice that's built up around the seals. It moves up and down a couple times real quick to pop the doors open. The charge port door, the lock does not engage. Normally in the summertime, when you pull the charging cord out, it unlocks to let it out, and then for whatever reason the lock tab moves back up into the lock position even though there's no charge cord in there. Then when you open the door opens and you hear it open up the latch so you can put the charge cord in, then it locks again. When the weather gets cold, it does not give that false lock state even without the charge cord in. That helps prevent charge port issues. There's a number of things like that Tesla has implemented to make this car much more usable in the wintertime. So just checking my tire pressures, when it gets cold out, the pressure drops. I'm at 39 and 40 psi for the tires. In the summertime it's 47 to 48 psi. In the hottest of weather they're up at 50. So just the temperature changes that pressure. But this car actually runs quite well in the winter. This is a long-range rear-wheel drive car. It is not all-wheel drive. It's a rear-wheel drive car, and I got to tell you, it works just fine. Today it's not icy out; it's just wet because it's 32 degrees out and snowing, 32 Fahrenheit, so 0 Celsius. So it's right at that freezing point, which means that it's, everything's gonna the snow's gonna melt pretty much as quickly as it touches the pavement anyway. It's sticking to the grass, as you can see. So but as the winter progresses and we have more snow, and we also have icy conditions, then I'll be sure to report how the car is doing then. But I wanted to discuss that video where it's 24 below. If you watch that video, I put a public comment there that basically said, if I hear a bunch of crap from viewers and trolls saying what a piece of crap car, doesn't even work in the winter, that I would disable comments. Well, yeah, that video, I've gotten so much, excuse the expression, but so much crap and BS from people And it is basically people that know absolutely nothing about what they're talking about. You know, so much for your $50,000 piece of junk that you can't even use in the winter. You know what's funny about that? When it was 24 below out, my wife's gas car wouldn't start. And no, it didn't have a bad battery. It was 24 below out. It cranked for a while, wouldn't start, and the hood was frozen shut, so I couldn't even jump it. The latch, the cable was frozen. Her car was stuck, and it was parked behind another car that did start, but we couldn't move her car to get to it. So my car was the only one that worked. So right off the bat, any trolls that are watching this and that somehow or another have a chip on their shoulder that EVs don't work in the winter, take a hike. I mean, for crying out loud, this was the only car of ours that worked, that we could use when the weather was 24 below. And honestly, how often is it that cold? At least in our area, rarely. Now, I know there's parts of the world that it's that cold often, but the car worked fine. The car worked just fine. The tires were slightly flat spotted for a bit, but the car worked fine. It does work better if you preheat the car, but that leads me to my next point. A lot of people are like, well, you preheat your car and I can't preheat it, which means I can't use a Tesla in the winter. The only thing that preheating the car really helps you with is that if you preheat the car, you get in the cabin, everything's nice and warm, and then you don't have to use additional energy while you're driving to warm the cabin because it's already warm. If the car's plugged in and you preheat it from the app, then you're using energy from your charge cord to preheat the car. That's the main thing. Also, if you activate the charging before you get in the car, say a half hour or whatever, 40 minutes before you go outside to the car, the action of charging the car warms up the battery. You can't just choose battery warming on a Tesla, but what I'll do is I'll plug in, I'll set the state of charge for 80%, then I get up in the morning and I will up the charge to 85 or 90% to force it to start charging, and then I'll turn on the cabin heat. So now I've got the battery charging, which means it's warming, and the cabin heating. That gives you more range during the day, but I wouldn't have to do any of that. I could just go right out in the car and drive, but your range does suffer a bit. Now, when the weather is say 25 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be, say, 0 degrees Celsius down to maybe 3 or 4 below Celsius, the range goes from a rated, my summertime range is about 310 miles. It goes down to probably 240-ish, right in that range, 245, under those conditions. When it's 24 below, it does go down pretty far. It'll go from that 310 miles down to in the range of about, say, 180 miles, 185-ish. That's still way more than most any person's ever going to use in a day, including me. I drive 160 miles a day. So, and under those circumstances, even I, who drive a lot every day, can still use this car. So, and no, it's not hurting the battery to do that. I've had a few people say, well, so in the wintertime, you lose 35, 40% of your range. Wow, it ruined your battery. No, that's just while it's cold. In the summer, your range comes back. But also, it's most of the winter, you lose maybe 20 or 25% of your driving range, which is a bummer, but you lose probably 10% of your range in a gas car anyway. But it's something I wanted to share with you. That the primary difference would be in a gas car, you already have waste heat. When the engine's running, you're generating heat anyway. So you can use that heat then to heat the car. So using heat or not using the heat in a gas car doesn't affect your driving range at all. In an EV, it affects your driving range pretty drastically. So that's the main reason that I preheat the cabin. So for instance, I don't even have the heat turned on right now. I've turned it on and off a couple times during this video just to thaw the windows or defog the windows. But I turn my seat heat on, 2 bacons as they say. I usually, from the app, I'll turn it on, the seat on high. When I get out to the car, I turn it down 1, so I'm at 2 bars on the seat heat. And I just turn the cabin heat on. Occasionally when the window starts to fog, I'll turn the cabin heat on for a couple of minutes to defog the windows. But generally speaking, if I preheat the car to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, I get out to the car, I turn the heat off. It's toasty in here, and it will retain that heat for a couple hours. I'll just use the seat heat and occasionally turn the cabin heat on, again, just to defog the windows. So that's basically a synopsis of the way I treat this car in the winter. I set my charge point for 80% overnight. Then when I get up in the morning, I try to do it an hour before I leave, but at least a half hour before I leave, I turn the cabin heat up to 80 degrees, and I turn the charging on. So I'll go from 80% to 85 or 90% or whatever on the app to force the battery to start to charge. So the charging warms the battery, the cabin heat warms the cabin, the car's all thawed down then. When I get out to the car, I turn the cabin heat off, turn the seat heat to 2 bars, which as the car preheated, I had it at 3 bars, and then I start driving. After 2 or 3 hours during the day, it gets kind of cold in here, and I'll turn the cabin heat on to warm the cabin back up again, and I leave the seat heat on. So that's my method of using this car in the winter. But so far today, the car's working fine. Again, it's only 0 Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit. As it gets colder, the car will be affected more so. But so anyway, those are my thoughts just for today for using this car in the winter. Also, I've never had a problem getting into my charge port. I'll mention that. I owned this car through the entire last winter, last summer, through last winter, through this summer. Now I'm into the second winter with this car. Never had an issue getting the charge port open. It's always opened, always closed in the winter. My cord is always plugged in and unplugged. Never an issue. Also, for those that don't know, I park outside. My garage is workshop. All of our cars are parked outside. So every morning I have to get up, clean the car off if there's snow on it, and defrost it. Turn on the app to warm up the car. That's my daily routine. So yeah, it sits outside. I am a worst case scenario Tesla owner, as in it's not only not in a heated garage, it's not in a garage. And I'm in northern Illinois, which isn't as cold as Siberia or Norway or some of these other places, but it's still, the winters get pretty cold here, and the car works wonderfully. And I'll say this, I have MaxBiter 3D floor mats, all-weather floor mats in this car, an absolute must. And in fact, I leave them in the car year-round because they're such a nice fit to the floor. They're not sponsoring me. I paid full price for my floor mats, but they fit so well to the floor, and they look so nice. They look factory that I leave them in the car year-round. So a definite must in the winter. So, also I have paint protection film on the nose of the car. It's good in the summer to keep bugs and rock chips off the nose of the car, but it's great in the winter because all the salt and slush hits it and it will slide off more easily than it does with the paint, and obviously it protects the paint against salt and all that. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep your eye on the channel. I got a lot of stuff going on. For those of you that have ordered screen mounts, a bunch of them are shipping out today. I've emailed several people for their balance and who haven't gotten back to me, so a couple of them I have their phone numbers, so I'll be calling them today. I'm going to be boxing up some more tonight. I'm going out of town. Well, there'll be people at home, but I'm going out of town, my wife and I, for a funeral this weekend, so I'll be available via email, but I won't be shipping any more kits before next week. Again, I've got a flurry of them going out before we leave out of town. So that's the status there. I started a Shopify page for the screen mounts, make ordering easier. So anyway, that's it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. But other than that, you have yourselves a wonderful day. Well, you can see that we've got some more snow coming down, and actually the roads are pretty slick right now. In fact, if I put the pedal all the way to the floor, not really much in the way of acceleration. The traction control light is kicking on, so it's pretty slick out, and the car's driving just fine. I'm very comfortable and familiar with driving this car in the winter. As I said earlier in the video, I owned it through the entire last winter without really any problems. I'd say the only negative to my particular car is being that it is a rear-wheel drive car, again, long-range rear-wheel drive, pulling up, say, driveways that have an incline when they're snowy. Just my last stop that I was at was that way. Got halfway up the driveway and the car wouldn't go any further. Had to back down the driveway and get a little bit of a running start. So for a rear-wheel drive car, for a two-wheel drive car, this thing has quite good traction control and it drives just fine. But there are occasions where all-wheel drive would definitely be nice. But that's not a Tesla ownership issue. That's a rear-wheel drive ownership issue. But for the most part, even in the very slick weather, it's just fine. I think any roads that this car would have issues with, even an all-wheel drive car would have issues with. So anyway, yeah, so it's fine. I mean, it's like any other car in the snow. It drives just fine. In fact, it's better than most cars in the snow for a number of reasons. One, the traction control on Teslas is far more advanced than most other cars in the market. Number two, being electric, there's no transmission that shifts, and it's just it's that smooth power delivery, I think, lends itself to slick surface driving more so than a gas engine and a shifting transmission would. So other than that, I would say the only other issue is when you let off for regen. With this car being rear-wheel drive, the regen is only through the rear wheels, and so you can feel them slipping and grabbing, and so you may be on the brake pedal a little bit more with the rear-wheel drive Tesla than you would with an all-wheel drive car, just because the brakes operate all four wheels, but in a rear-wheel drive car, the regen is only the rear wheels. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Keep an eye on the channel. I've got a lot more coming up very soon. Take it easy now. Bye-bye.